My name is Shane Brody. I'm here in New Hampshire, and I'm talking with a guest today. And I'm traveling around the country talking to trans people of various identities about their beliefs, political beliefs, religious beliefs, or if they're not religious, and also their identities. Today we're dealing with some blustery weather. It's even threatening rain. It's pretty windy out, so I'm probably going to have to edit this a lot because we might get gusts of wind and that sort of thing. Anyway, I'm very excited to be here. Portsmouth is just such a lovely little town. Oh my goodness. I was just driving through the downtown and I was imagining that I was like on horseback, and it was a couple of centuries ago, and, I was going to pull up to the tavern and have an ale or something, It has that kind of charm to it. It's really, really cute. Or maybe I just got off a pirate ship and, I had my loot on my back or something, Anyway, yeah, Robert Louis Stevenson, that kind of thing. Anyway, enough of that. This is such a cute town. Got to say it again. I'm going to hand it over to my guest, and she can, introduce herself in whatever way she wants. So, go ahead.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be featured on your podcast, and I very much welcome the opportunity.
Yeah.
My name is Charlie Brickham. I used to work in this area as an electrical engineer.
Okay.
At the
I've been meeting so many trans women who are connected with engineering and manufacturing recently.
That has been the same experience that I've had in my entire life as well. But yeah, I used to overhaul 688 class nuclear submarines here at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard.
Wow.
For a number of years, and I just loved the area. It's probably the best little area that I've ever resided in.
Yeah.
In my life, and now that I live elsewhere, I still am going to come back here in the summertime.
What specifically do you like about it, though?
Oh man,
because you travel a lot and you have the opportunity to go elsewhere. But what brings you back here?
The list is very long. The weather is usually very temperate, and you get lovely ocean breezes. The beaches have free parking.
Are they gravel beaches or sand beaches?
There's sand. There's some gravel. There's mostly sand beaches. But there's just a lovely collection of both private and public beaches that you can kind of little gyms hidden in the nooks and crannies that you can find your way to. Yeah,
there's a lot of little tiny coves. Like the coast is very crenulated.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I love the beaches. Parking my little camper out there for the afternoon and doing lunch or dinner or something like that. Is definitely something I do on a regular basis, but also there's a lot of stuff going on downtown. The downtown's not huge, but it still has a substantial amount of activities.
Well, it's very old, so it is so small that it's very walkable.
Absolutely, that too. But there's free concerts on the waterfront. There's free movies downtown on the waterfront in Prescott Park. There is concerts at the music hall constantly. There are different theme nights. There's a couple nightclubs. I have hundreds of friends in the area as well that I get to see.
Yeah, even though it's small, it's on this major highway,
95,
going up to the next bigger town, which is Portland, Maine. Yep. So it makes sense that there would be a lot of cultural activities here because it would be easier to get to.
Yeah, it's equidistant between Boston and Portland.
Yeah.
And also Manchester in the kind of northwest direction.
To go to Manchester, though, you kind of have to do a dog leg and then come back. Off the major highways.
A little bit. 101 is pretty direct. As long as you can get down to Route 101, you can go straight out to Manchester pretty easily. Yeah, it's about 45 minutes. It's not bad. Yep.
Yeah. When I'm used to bigger places, so when I look at the map, I'm like, oh, that's so far away. And then I put into Google and I'm like, oh, that's just commuting distance.
It's like an hour.
It's really.
Let's do this. Yeah.
It's really, really close. Everything's really close.
Yeah, I still go to Boston pretty frequently. In fact, I was down there this weekend for Fan Expo Boston, which is a huge Comic-Con event in the Back Bay Seaport area. Okay. And
are
that was a
you
lot
somebody
of fun.
who does something there, or are you just a participant?
I'm glad you asked that question.
I don't know. We just met a few minutes ago.
I'm a professional cosplayer, so I dress up in cosplay. It's something I've done for 5 or 6 years now. So much so that I have an online following for my cosplay, things I
Okay.
create.
Okay.
And the event that I'm doing this weekend is another event that pays me to show up in cosplay
Oh.
and sign autographs from my
Oh,
fan
that's in
base.
New York?
That's going to be in New York
Okay.
this weekend.
Yeah, it was. Thank you so much for being so flexible today, by
Of course,
the way.
yeah.
Because the first place we went, I haven't quite gotten it into my head yet that I'm in New England. There's a lot of restrictions on dogs here, and I couldn't bring my dog into the park, which is kind of a problem. Because if I leave my dog in the car, then people will call the police and that sort of thing. So I can't have that. So we had to move around a bit this morning. In fact, I'm gonna edit right here. Let's stop because I'm gonna move my dog because he's shaking the table a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, my dog was kind of under the table and getting wrapped up in wires and that sort of thing. So that was a situation I had to remedy. So we were talking about a Comic-Con that you're involved in. Could you give us some further details about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've been involved in Comic-Cons for a number of years now, and I like to cosplay different characters from TV and movie and comic books, and developed a bit of a following online.
What kind of characters? I don't follow all this kind of thing, so I don't know. So please tell me.
People can cosplay for different reasons.
Yeah.
If they connect with a character
Yeah.
and they want to portray that
but
character.
what kind? What kind of characters?
Mostly villains.
Oh, okay. Would these be villains that people would know from
Yeah.
comic books?
I try to do recognizable things, but I've done a couple obscure characters as
Okay.
well.
Like
for
strange aliens or something, or
video game characters, so
Okay.
lesser known video games that I've enjoyed that maybe not everyone has heard about. I have done a few
Okay.
of those, but also more well-known characters like Poison Ivy from the Batman series and
Okay.
Shredder from the Ninja Turtles and things like that. So stuff that are pretty well-known in pop culture.
Yeah.
That are pretty
Yeah.
recognizable.
The ironic thing about that is I have no idea who any of those people are, but those characters. But yeah, I know. I'm sort of distant from all that, and it's not something I'm actually proud of. I mean, it might seem that way. I mean, some people are like that. Like, I don't watch TV, and I'm so proud of myself, or whatever. I don't know. I just don't go there for some reason. I just do other things.
Well, it's never too late.
Yeah. I think if I delved in, I would do it too much. I'm one of those kind of people. So instead, I go to the library and just get like 8 books and put them all over my bed and read. So,
Yeah. Well, one thing you can do that won't cost you any money
Yeah.
is go to a comic book shop on an annual day called Free Comic Book Day. It's usually
Okay.
the first Saturday in May.
Okay.
A lot of comic book creating companies will put out just a little brief synopsis of some of their best stories.
Yeah.
And you can go in and it's Free Comic Book Day. You collect a few.
Okay.
And then you take them home with you.
Yeah.
And that's how you get started into what they're offering.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I noticed that even small towns will sometimes. Sorry, I have a lozenge in my mouth, so if it sounds funny, I had a cold a couple of weeks ago. Even small towns will have like a comic book store.
Oh, yeah.
It's something that's kind of enduring. Like other kinds of stores have kind of come and gone.
Yeah.
But for some reason, comic book stores keep holding on, which is kind of
That's
cool.
true.
Why do you think that is?
Escapism.
Well, there's more that they offer too, besides just comic books.
Right,
as
graphic
well.
novels and sometimes figurines
yeah.
and sometimes video games. But yeah, I think that people will always strive for an escape, a temporary escape from some of the things that they're
Sure.
facing. To play off of what you mentioned a second ago, I was actually raised in Japan.
Okay.
Of many places that I lived. My parents were military, and we lived on a Air Force base over there. And even on the military base itself had a comic book shop.
Oh,
and
really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's how I got a lot of my my early childhood comic books was
Okay.
from that shop.
Yeah, I lived in strange places as well for an American, and I had kind of the opposite, where we would go places where there really wasn't that, or the people we were around oftentimes weren't Americans, and they just didn't have this sort of pop culture stuff. Like I didn't watch. I grew up in the '70s, and I didn't watch like the Brady Bunch and all those things that came out in the '70s. I sort of caught up a little tiny bit of that in reruns, but when people have all these pop culture references that they're putting out there, I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. You'll have to explain that to me. Anyway, speaking of the Comic-Con thing, I did interview somebody who did bring a comic book convention up to Fairbanks. It was like the first one that had ever been there when I had a radio show there at the University of Alaska. And they were mentioning that some of it was like it was very open to various kinds of gender expressions and sort of, like cross-dressing for people who are not trans people, for instance, but they still would cross-dress.
Whenever I do a panel at a Comic-Con, I talk about different aspects of cosplay and something called crossplay, which is portraying a character of another gender for no other superficial reason than to portray a character you enjoy, but also perhaps internally exploring that gender identity as well.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find that there are some people there who are also trans?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you like recognize each other? Do you have any special events? I don't know. I've never been.
We have special telepathic communications.
I see you. Well, we used to call it gaydar, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm surrounded by talented cosplayers, regardless of their identity, and that's kind of that's my camaraderie, as you will, my community, and
so be careful about.
Yeah, pronouns are usually honored in the community very well. So it's a very welcoming sort of place that I've encountered.
Yeah. So, the guys I talked to seem like kind of like bro kind of guys. But then when they started talking, they were so open about gender stuff, and I was like, wow, this is cool. I wouldn't have expected that. Let's see. So you're doing that this weekend. You just seem really busy. What other kinds of things are you doing? I saw online that you're also a model. Do you do other kinds of modeling besides this cosplay?
I when I was early in my transition, as almost kind of a way to keep track of my own progress, I used to do a lot of modeling.
Okay.
Just to kind of see my best angles and how I present myself and how I am seen. Okay. From a different perspective as well.
And you worked with like professional
photographers that were doing free photo shoots or whatever, and of different themes.
Were they like building up their portfolios?
Yeah, it was kind of that's usually what TFP means, is trade for photos. Okay. And so it's mutually beneficial to each portfolio that we just kind of get together and we make art and then we just agree to use it on our portfolios. Moving forward. So it's usually just kind of a fun hobby for both. Very few modeling gigs actually paid me money. So
it used to be
it was more of a hobby.
Part of an art community where some people, they were artists, but then they were also models for other artists. So it was kind of this exchange. Because if you're doing figurative art, it's really important to actually see a 3D figure, a person, while you're doing it. Cool.
From there, I segued into a local burlesque group as well. So I did kind of that from
that's unusual
artistic expression, kind of maintaining that artistic expression and kind of preparation and outfit wearing.
That's really unusual. I've seen a lot of burlesque.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of unusual to have somebody who is a male to female transgender person in burlesque. Definitely, I've known a lot in the drag world.
Oh yeah.
But I've never seen any in the burlesque world, and I've definitely seen a lot of burlesque shows because the West Coast is, for a while, it was just everywhere you went in all the gay bars there were burlesque shows, even up in Alaska. Which actually has a long history of it because of the gold mining up there.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so there's been a long history of it there. Probably San Francisco as well, I would imagine. But how did you get into that? Because usually it's cisgendered women and
I just wanted to kind of do more stage things.
Just more.
Yeah, as a natural exhibitionist, I just kind of want to be seen.
Okay.
And that was another means of doing that.
Yeah.
So so I got involved, and it was mostly kind of dancing and cute little outfits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I wasn't like a featured performer, but I was part of the troupe.
Okay.
And I did that for a few years, and until unfortunately a cancer diagnosis removed me from just about all of my activities.
I'm sure.
It's wideswept across the board.
Yeah.
So as I prepared myself for the diagnosis of stage 2 cancer.
Oh, yeah. Are you through with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So generally.
Great.
It's a 5-year sort of benchmark for possible relapse after chemotherapy, and that was about 8 years ago.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Just a few days ago, Olivia Newton-John died. Yeah, and she'd been dealing with that for a very long time, and being in remission, and unfortunately it came back.
Yeah, it can reappear, relapse, metastasize into a different type.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things. So I'm constantly now that it's happened once. I've done 12 rounds of chemotherapy at Dana-Farber in Boston.
My goodness.
And emerged the other end somewhat healthy, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I'm constantly looking out for other lumps and other kind of key aspects of
and you
others.
must be good about going in to be checked, I would imagine.
I do so with the frequency that my doctors suggest. And I mean, the first time I found a lump, I was kidding about it because it didn't hurt. I was joking. I was like, look at this lump. Maybe I need another sick day off from work.
Sure.
It doesn't, because it didn't hurt, but it was asymmetrical. It was only on one side of my neck.
Okay.
You know, so, you know, I went from joking about it and talking to my primary care, who was usually also a very jovial man. And he was very serious that day, and he says, I'm gonna refer you to a specialist.
Yeah.
Because it's not looking great.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I got actually asked. So Boston, if you don't know, I mean, it's kind of the regional hub out here, because it's just such a large city. And then, of course, there's New York or whatever, and Philly. But really, closer to here, it's Boston. And they have tremendous hospitals. And they're, you know...
They have a whole medical district
of
hospitals.
Yeah.
MGH, Dana-Farber, all of them through there.
And very welcoming of trans people.
Absolutely,
and
100%.
There's a lot of competence there, which is great. I recently had to go there to get some medical care as well. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit more about your being a trans person.
Sure.
Can you describe like when that started and your process around that?
I'm an only child to 2 conservative Republican former military parents who are not supportive in any way, shape, or form. So as soon as their child began cross-dressing, I was punished severely at an early age. But I always knew that I always knew that the entity that was me preferred to present in a feminine fashion. Yeah. And I didn't even know gender at the time.
Yeah. Whoop. Yeah, I think that was a hornet.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. We're right by a garden, so there's probably some insects out there.
So I that's the only thing I knew at an early age, is that I wanted to possess feminine beauty in its purest form.
Sure.
And that's kind of where I wanted to take my life, even at an early age of 3. I have pictures of me at age 3 preferring to wear dresses and skirts, and my parents allowed me to have that phase, as they called it. But then my feminine garments disappeared shortly after, and I was like, where's my dress? Like, I liked that dress.
Yeah.
I was wearing that dress.
Yeah.
Where did it go?
Yeah.
And spent the rest of my life trying to find that dress. I'm just kidding. So yeah, we were stationed in Texas in the early part of my life, and then we were stationed in Japan that I mentioned. And then at that point, my dad, who had been in the military for 20 some odd years, retired and brought me to New England. And then my mom finished up her time in the military. She was about 1.5 years or 2 years behind him. and then so they're both fully retired from the armed forces, and
that must have been tough for like one parent to stay in and another parent to leave.
Well, I just went with my dad to settle up here in New England while my mom finished up.
Why did they want to come here to New England?
An offshoot tangent real quick. My mom was actually in Desert Storm for a couple of years in the late 80s, early 90s. And so my dad and I, mom went to war, dad stayed at home with the kid, were kind of like living, by ourselves. So it was kind of a common thing. It was something we've done in the past.
Okay.
Why did my dad like the New England area? When he started in the Air Force, he was stationed at Loring Air Force Base, which at the time was a functioning Air Force Base in northern Maine.
Okay.
And he liked the offerings of the Baxter State Park, Mount Katahdin area, and so he wanted to, in his retirement, live close to that.
Yeah, Maine is really beautiful. It's a lot like Alaska, actually.
Yeah, a little bit. It's very boring for a child of that age.
Love it.
If you're following this story, I moved from Tokyo, Japan to upstate Maine.
I understand.
And I did not have a good time.
I'll tell you about me. I was a bit of a fashion plate, a little tiny, just ever so slightly, when I was a teenager, because we went to London, and this was during a punk rock era, right? So I got all these like new wave and punk rock clothes and stuff, and they were really cool. I mean, all these like geometric, crazy, like fold them, zip them up things. And I mean, it sounds kind of dorky now, but then it was just like, whoa, And then we moved to Africa, to Central Africa, to Zambia. And then we moved to Texas. And the people in Texas were just like, whoa, you look funny and you talk funny, And I was like looking right back at them. Well, you kind of talk funny too.
Where in Texas?
Yeah, Houston. I call it the armpit of Texas.
Okay.
Anyway, just because everything blows up and it's so hot there.
I was Fort Worth, Dallas.
Yeah.
Carswell Air Force Base.
Yeah, there's a bit of a rivalry between the two cities, but, they're pretty similar. Very aggressive drivers, I know that. Yep. Very hot, too. I would mostly just come out at night. Anyway, so... so I understand moving from like a more, wilder place and you're kind of worldly, and then you move to a smaller place. It's like, whoa. Yeah, it's kind of a shock.
Yeah, so I mostly kept to myself and just like hung out in the woods. The people in northern Maine aren't open to outsiders very, very well. Yes. So I found myself not only I noticed unsupported by my parents, but also unsupported by the community, and I just went in the woods.
I noticed that some of the roads just kind of end suddenly. Like you're on a road and it even has a number.
They're building a road and they're like, how far do we want this to go? Let's just end this.
Yeah, let's just
It's not going well. Let's just stop.
So weird. Yeah. Yep. I mean, that happens in Alaska, but I didn't expect that in the lower 48, You think things would connect up.
Well, I mean, Maine's a different animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I finished high school and went to college.
Okay.
At the University of Maine, Orono, and obtained my electrical engineering degree.
Okay. Yeah.
With a minor in advanced robotics and a concentration in mathematics.
Fancy.
And then from there I came to Portsmouth, New Hampshire for my first career.
Okay.
Or first job, which turned into a career.
Was that like a civilian contractor with the military?
Yes. So I've spent my entire life with the military and the DoD, but I've never actually enlisted myself.
Yes. I have an uncle like that. He worked for Lockheed Martin, and so they did lots of contracts.
Yep. I've interfaced with Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman.
Okay, we were just talking about your kind of your first jobs as an engineer and that sort of thing. And that was in the Portsmouth area where we live. Where we are right now.
I remember what I was saying. Mm-hmm. So I started at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard here between like southern Maine and Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
It's on a little island in the middle of the river coming off the ocean. And I used to kid with the sailors on the naval submarines by saying I had more experience with the military before age 10 than they currently have right now.
Right.
So
yeah, it's I always find that's interesting to meet people who grew up that way because, yeah, they're very much, they know
It's a very structured and disciplined sort of life.
Yeah, people always think that I grew up that way just because I've moved so much, and I'm like, no. And people could probably tell that from my personality too. I'm not like that at all. So, my parents are teachers.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
That makes sense too.
We just moved around a lot. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, so how long were you an engineer doing that sort of thing? Are you still an engineer? Do you still do that?
So I started that in '05.
Yeah.
This is where the timeline crosses with my cancer diagnosis.
Oh, okay.
So I worked there until I was diagnosed with cancer in 2013. So that was 8 years into my into my tenure. So obviously I was kind of taking a break at that time and going through chemotherapy. And then when I emerged out the other side, I applied for a disability retirement.
Oh,
so
okay.
with the DoD, there's a policy if you've worked for the DoD for more than 5 years and you encounter a health condition that impacts your work,
Yeah.
you can apply for a disability retirement.
Oh, great.
So as unfortunate as all those conditions were,
Yeah.
I went ahead and applied for it. So it was actually denied in a couple times in the following years. And it takes a full year to year and a half to appeal. It's a bit of a process.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like what I've heard of people trying to get on SSDI.
yeah, I'm sure a lot of them are a lot of the same situations are kind of similar.
It takes a couple years. You need a
government,
lawyer.
hurry up and wait.
Yeah, you need a lawyer and
It helps having a lawyer.
Yeah.
But actually, the pandemic kind of worked out in my favor.
Okay.
So we started. I used to get in trouble for having my cell phone has a camera-enabled cell phone near the government computers because I social media. That's what I do. But it's funny. I used to get in trouble for that, but suddenly when the pandemic hit, they're sending all of our desktop computers home with us, like DoD top secret clearance access assets.
Oh my goodness.
Home.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have my iPad, my personal laptop, and my cell phone next to this machine, and I'm not getting in trouble. And I'm like, this is really stupid. This whole thing is stupid. But that's a different tangent.
That's
so
wild.
so I was teleworking my electrical engineering job from. At the time, I was living. I moved out of my townhouse here in Portsmouth into a small camper.
Why did you do that?
No rent, no bills.
Okay.
That's
a common thing right now.
Is very
kind
common.
of a thing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. And I think you're going to see more people doing it as cost of living and housing prices increase.
Just as a tangent off that, have you found any? Because there are quite a few people who are doing this. Have you found any backlash in, urban settings around that sort of thing?
What do you mean by backlash?
Like parking restrictions or, no overnight parking, no RVs,
I haven't seen any signs that say no RVs, but I have seen an increase in signs that say no overnight parking, or I've also seen an increase in local ordinances that say no sleeping in cars.
Yes.
I have a setup that's kind of stealthy, so I mean, you can't really tell I'm in it.
Yes.
And that's why I picked this particular setup. So I can kind of stealth camp if need be. But I do try to pay attention to, and my rig is small enough that I can back it into a normal parking spot. You probably saw it right out front here. But yeah, so the camper itself doesn't have the infrastructure of a secure LAN connection and things like that you would need for a dedicated DoD asset like a desktop computer. So I had to find a friend with a house big enough that I could have a private space to set that up. So in 2020, I kind of moved out of my camper and then back into a house sort of situation. Instead of living on my own like I was here in Portsmouth, I was just staying in a guest room of a friend and teleworking.
Yeah, even just doing this small project of mine, I find it difficult to find Wi-Fi and a decent strength to just do the basics of.
You don't carry a Wi-Fi hotspot?
Yeah,
I have a Wi-Fi hotspot in my camper.
I do as well, but it's only a limited number of gigabytes. When you're uploading videos and all this stuff, it takes a really long time. So it's interesting. We had this COVID era, and it's almost like it's exposed a lot of weaknesses in our
It's definitely
infrastructure.
changed our infrastructure
Yeah.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
Ever since I moved into my camper, I've maintained Wi-Fi hotspot. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm a big TV junkie. So I
Oh, okay.
would not be comfortable making that jump if I didn't have 24-hour gym services and the ability to watch TV all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I go to Planet Fitness.
Same.
Yeah.
Yep.
I find, I don't know what the women's side is, but the men's side is always really icky. Like it's.
Well, I've had the pleasure of using both, and I can
Yeah.
say that I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. The men's side of Planet Fitness is usually pretty gross, but there's nothing that can be done about it. But yeah, it's really cheap and it's everywhere, and which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could just.
Yeah, that's what I do when I'm traveling is
Yeah.
just look for a Planet Fitness to shower and.
Yeah.
I'm good to go.
I also go to Panera a lot and McDonald's because they tend to have pretty good Wi-Fi.
Library has amazing Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Sometimes I go to libraries, but it's difficult with my dog. A lot of
Right. Yeah.
municipal areas
Yeah.
sometimes are very restrictive, especially around libraries. I'm not sure why that is, but I found that in New England a lot. Yeah. So what else should we talk about? What would you like to talk about?
I feel like we were in the middle of something.
Were we talking about your work life?
Yeah. Okay. So my retirement
Yeah.
was approved in 2020.
Oh,
So
great.
2020 was actually the best year of my life.
Yeah.
I began the year. I was planning several of my transgender surgeries for 2020. I picked
Okay.
up in health insurance at the end of 2019 that would cover it, and I had my. I jumped right on it, like early 2020 in January.
Did that continue through the COVID
I'll
era?
get to that.
Really? Okay.
So I jumped on all my consults in January.
Yeah.
We sent it into insurances, several. And then by the end of February, everything had been pre-approved for the procedures. And we planned surgery starting mid-March.
Okay.
I think you can see where this is going.
Sure.
So in March of 2020, COVID happened.
Right.
And all elective surgeries, and elective surgery is anything that you can plan yourself,
Sure.
non-emergency
Sure.
elective procedures, were suspended indefinitely with no
Yes.
rescheduling allowed on the
Yeah.
calendar.
Especially out here in very densely populated areas, I bet everything just immediately shut down.
Yeah, so I was
Yeah.
planning for Boston
Yeah.
to have my procedures
Yeah.
done in Boston. So as a result of that, I went into a very deep depression. I cried for weeks.
Yeah.
But I couldn't concentrate on very long because at that point, I was being tossed out. We were all being tossed out of the house we were staying in. So I was forced back into the camper early 2020. And then work was like, we're sending you home with your desktop computers. Now you got to find a place to go.
Yeah.
And so it was one catastrophe after another.
Yeah.
And I couldn't deal with it. So eventually found a place to set up my desktop computer. And then I'm glad we kind of talked about the region a little bit,
Yeah.
because I was planning to try to reschedule my Boston surgeries.
Okay.
But what I ended up doing is actually, because there's fewer people in Maine, scheduling my surgeries for Portland,
Okay.
and ended up driving up there to start the whole process all over again.
Yeah. My dog needed a little walk there. And I forgot what I was talking about, but during the early part of 2020, I was teaching classes, and it was kind of the same thing. They were like, okay, you can't come in the building. We don't have Wi-Fi in our parking lots. You got to figure it out. So I would go to like retail businesses to teach classes and monitor like the students and stuff.
Were you just in your car at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Someone
yeah.
needs an RV.
Yeah, well, no, I lived in a cabin, and so I
Oh.
had to drive.
Oh,
and
okay.
there was
Off the grid. Yeah.
There was no internet, there was no nothing, so I had to go into town and go to a retail business, and it was just ridiculous. And you're saying that you had to bring home like
Yeah, I had
official government
a
computers.
full government DoD desktop setup.
That's wild. That's wild.
Which obviously would not fit in my very small camper.
That's wild.
So I had to figure out a place. They had all kinds of requirements, like dedicated, secure LAN
Yeah.
connection, a lockable space
Right.
in which to keep it.
Right.
and
There were some
none of the
people-
things that I could provide.
There were some people online I noticed who were making deals with people who have houses just to park their vehicle on their property somehow.
Interesting. I hadn't encountered any of those.
Yeah, like in their driveway. So
Yeah.
basically people would work or they would sort of live in
Right.
somebody else's driveway just as long as they had reliable internet access, because a lot of people who had, like a tech job or
Right.
a professional job, were doing it remotely. They
Right,
were luckily
yeah.
they could do it remotely, because a lot of people just lost their jobs.
Yeah, the requirement of having a desktop computer is that it doesn't get Wi-Fi.
Right.
So I needed a Ethernet cable, a dedicated Ethernet cable
Yeah.
to
Right.
connect to it. So, so the best thing was just setting up in one of my friends' guest rooms and running a dedicated router line to the desktop computer. So yeah, that's what I did. That's what I ended up doing. And then later in 2020, the hospital in Portland finally got back to me. They were easing restrictions, and I was able to reschedule the procedures that I had previously been locked out of.
Yeah.
So that eventually turned around in June.
And so I'm guessing that Maine had different. The state of Maine was doing different things than the state of Massachusetts.
They're doing the same thing. There's just fewer people.
Okay.
Maine has very few people.
Okay.
High taxes, few people.
Okay.
And so it was a lot easier to restart the process 2 states away than to wait for Massachusetts to reschedule.
Right.
Because that just wasn't happening.
Right.
I still have not gotten a call back from my former surgeon. Like,
oh, wow.
It just totally wasn't on his radar anymore.
Yeah. I'll tell you, from somebody who is trying to access care down here now, the waiting lists are tremendous.
Yeah.
Like months and months, and maybe like 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
Not even for anything fancy like getting surgery, just like consult, or getting on hormones, or
I haven't had that experience. I've had a lot of doctors appointments in recent months, and they usually get me in pretty quick. That's strange.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. I've just been calling different places, and it's just been really difficult. I mean, I eventually did find a place, but the big hospitals in Boston that have trans clinics, they're I think the soonest I could get in was December.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I can see that.
Yeah. But maybe if you're
that's
already...
very specialized sort of treatment, yeah.
And if you're already in the system, it makes sense that you would get a sooner one. Yeah.
I mean, I was just talking from a general medication perspective. It's just primary care got me in within 2 weeks.
Okay.
Consult with a face surgeon in Boston. I got in pretty easily.
Okay.
Yeah, just general stuff like that. But
well,
yeah,
great.
In August of 2020, I was the first transgender contestant of Miss New England Petite. So it's for the shorter girls, shorter girls.
Awesome.
And
How tall are
they were very. I am 5'4" on a good day.
So you're a little taller than me.
Yeah, a little bit perhaps.
Everybody's taller than me, so I don't even notice. Anyway.
And so they were pretty welcoming about having a transgender woman on their stage.
Oh, wonderful!
And it was nice to be back, with the other women in the changing room, just putting on my gown or my swimsuit or something like that, and just kind of being welcomed. In fact, I was so welcomed that they gave me Miss Congeniality, which is the award given by everyone to one of their own, for being just.
So all the contestants vote on that.
Yeah. So Miss Congeniality, every contestant gets a vote as to who they like. In their ranks.
Yeah.
And
what's that like, being in a beauty contest? Is it like that movie? Like
it's a little bit like Miss Congeniality, the Sandra Bullock movie.
Yeah.
It's.
I think that's a very cute movie. I love it.
Everyone's nice.
Yeah.
Some people are fakely nice. Some people are genuinely nice, and everyone's just trying to do the same thing and compete for the same sort of titles.
Sure.
I knew I didn't go in expecting to win. So.
Is it very competitive? Or?
It's pretty competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly, you get various. I went in with a dedicated mindset, but I didn't go in expecting to place anywhere. You know what I'm saying? I just want to be part of the process. That's all I want.
Yeah.
And just to have that life experience that a lot of women have at one point in their life.
Sure.
I I gave myself the entire sort of experience of going to the gym every single day leading up to, for months, for a long time leading up to the event itself, picking out some really wonderful things and getting it specially suited for myself. And
like tailored.
Yeah, tailored and hemmed and stuff like that. Just just general things that you would go through as a woman going into a beauty pageant, and
how do you work
makeup
out,
and spray tan and stuff like that.
How do you work out for something like that? Because, I mean, I'm sorry if this is a bit of a controversial topic, but I find that, in my conversations with some trans women, like working out is a little bit difficult because they don't want to bulk up, and they often want to de-emphasize musculature. So how do you work out, I guess, as a trans woman?
You can... there's a lot of great machines at the gym that target certain muscle groups.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? If you don't want to build up your biceps, if that builds up faster in assigned male at birth individuals, then you can avoid that and do something else that would concentrate on your abs or concentrate on your calves or something like that.
So more of a refining.
Don't increase the weight, but increase the number of reps. You know what I'm saying? So you're toning and not building. But also one of my good friends, April Spears, she's trans. She was a male bodybuilder, and now she is a very beautiful female. And you can find her on YouTube. She talks about carving your body into a feminine sort of shape as well. So that's something people can look into if they're really interested in sort of that thing. I did my best, and I was given Miss Congeniality and third runner-up in my beauty pageant division.
Awesome.
So I'm right in the middle. I was like third of 5. Yep.
That's awesome.
So that's kind of fun.
I don't. Sorry, let's stop for a second. So that's really awesome. I do have a kind of a dorky question for you, though.
Sure.
What was your speech about? Did they have a little speech thing?
They did the top 3 in every category answered a question on stage. So I basically drew a question out of the bowl and answered it. So that, in a way, that's harder.
What was it?
So the question that I received was, what piece of advice would you give to someone? And my response was that don't be afraid to try new things, because I this is a new thing for me on stage, and I would not be here if I didn't kind of want this, to be up here. And don't, it's okay if it's not perfect. And I think that was my advice. It's okay. I can't remember what he said exactly, but it's okay to not be perfect.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be perfect. That's what I said. It doesn't have to be perfect. Whenever you're attempting something new, don't get frustrated. Don't let it stop you from trying new things. Whatever you do, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just do it.
Well, that sounds like a really, kind of authentic answer.
Yeah.
When you...
As an engineer, I'm a perfectionist, so I have to constantly tell myself when I'm trying new things and I get frustrated, especially with cosplay, when I'm developing a new technique or trying something new, and it looks like crap. And I'm just like, deep breath, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Right. Yeah, I actually had to get over some perfectionism too. There's some things that have to do with my family about that, but also I am from a science background, not quite engineering, although I did take some engineering courses. And I always felt like I needed to be within parameters and, color within the lines kind of thing, I mean, always trying to be that A student or whatever. But if I was never really challenging myself, if I'm not getting a B, that's not good. I feel like if I was getting a B, that I was challenging myself more than if I was just taking a class getting an A. But I'm glad that I worked through that, because on the other side of that, I actually found out that I was an artist. And when I'm making something, usually 80 to 90% of the time it looks terrible. It's only like that last little push where I'm really trying to get something to look the way that I want it to look, so that it doesn't quite like offend me or something. Like I'm looking at something, I'm like, something about that is wrong. Okay, let me change it. And then I have it. Then I've got it. Right. And that's not perfectionism. That's just really exploring it, you know. Because if I was a perfectionist, I wouldn't even dip my hands into that,
Right.
you know, into that mud that I'm working with.
It doesn't have to be perfect, Shane.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a little worried. I'm trying to move on to like wood, but wood is its whole whole
Leather
other
is totally
thing.
different than wood,
Yeah.
and wood is totally different than
Yeah.
foam, and
Or-
foam is totally different than sewing.
Yeah, or metal.
Yep, metalworking.
Even
Yep.
worse. I mean, you have to make that cut, and you have to be really, you have to be committed to it. Luckily, with clay though, you can keep taking things
That's
off.
also
putting it
true.
back
Yeah, there's
on.
some that are more forgiving than
Yeah,
others.
I love that. Do you have any art practice besides the cosplay, of course?
Well, cosplay.
That seems like an art form in
It
itself.
is very much an art
Yeah.
form.
Very much like drag is also an art form.
Right, yeah. What I like about cosplay is that you're constantly being pushed to learn new techniques and different mediums.
Okay.
So I've worked with resin, I've worked with EVA foam, I've worked with tooling EVA foam, tooling leather,
Okay.
sewing.
Do you ever work with like latex, like making?
I haven't yet,
prosthetics
but a
and-
lot of my friends do. I have
Okay.
not explored that. There's so many different facets of cosplay that I have not gotten into.
Yeah.
Thermoplastics, I have plenty of them. I still haven't gotten really into it yet.
Okay.
I've done some clay work. I've done a lot of sewing. But yeah, each one of these is multifaceted,
Yeah.
you know, and very deep as to how far you want to go with them
Yeah.
as well. So that's what I like about cosplay is it's constantly pushing you to learn something new and develop a new skill.
Yeah. I always like looking at the photographs of something like that afterwards. You know, like online, I follow some Star Trek whatever's, you know, some groups or whatever.
Aha, you do know about this stuff.
Just barely. I'm like the most ignorant person probably who's ever who even knows what this stuff is. But you know, I mean, Star Trek is kind of old school, you know, from the 60s. But you know, people will gale force winds, yeah. People will post photographs of them going to conventions and, you know, getting autographed pictures from Shatner or whatever like that, and you know, dressing up as various characters from Star Wars or Star Trek or whatever kind of universe. And yeah, I'm always amazed at like the gamut. Like some of them are pretty primitive, and you know, they're just everybody's having fun though, which is great.
Yep,
You know,
that's what it's
some of
about.
them were more like you, where it's probably a bit fancier. You
Yeah.
know, an engineer, I would expect that you would come up with something pretty
I'm
fancy.
constantly trying to rise to that occasion.
Yeah.
I have an engineering degree. What am I doing with this?
That's right.
It looks like crap. I can't be seen in this. But yeah, so cosplay is fantastic. I
Yeah.
started developing that as a hobby after my chemotherapy, and I
Okay,
had
yeah.
some nice wigs to work with and things like that. So I started getting more into it at that point. And then in 2020, obviously Comic-Con shut down, and I was just doing like crafting.
Yeah, this is like the Star Trek part, or the what is that? The Twister movie where they're like,
Yep.
they tie themselves to some well.
And you
or
see the
something.
cow floating through, in the house. Yeah,
Dorothy,
nice,
Toto.
very good.
Anyway,
So in 2020, I was instead of going to Comic Cons and signing autographs
Yes.
for fans and stuff like that, and making money that way, I was actually making EVA foam masks.
Oh.
So I had all the materials I had, including some HEPA filters that I found at Walmart, and I was comprising these amazing ornate
oh wow,
Comic-Con masks, like
Okay.
Mortal Kombat characters, Bane
Sure.
from Batman, Shredder from the Ninja Turtles, pretty much anything that people could suggest to me, I was
Sure.
making. I had a 40-person wait list,
Awesome.
you know,
Yeah.
and these were very expensive masks, and
Yes.
I was doing a lot of them.
Yeah, if you're
And
gonna
it was
go
a lot of
fancy.
fun. I created a brief small company that year called COVID Creations,
Okay.
where I was selling,
Yeah.
you know, COVID masks,
Yeah.
protective gear.
Yeah, and if it's fancy,
And we
people-
wear glasses, so you know the fogging.
Sure,
So
yeah,
I
yeah.
designed them so that they would not fog up.
Okay. Yeah.
And they have straps that go all the way around the head. So I solved every problem that conventional cloth masks had
Yeah.
as an engineer, and then just like threw all my skills as a cosplayer at it.
Right. Yeah. I bet people were excited about that because
It was a lot of fun.
like those
Yeah.
little blue ones and stuff. Like those are so ugly.
Yeah.
And they get dirty and gross. You know.
The
really
first one
quick.
I made is just like kind of a crazy opening shape in the center, and had rivets going down the side, and I
Oh.
sprayed it like sterling silver and tarnished it up with some black paint, and it was just epic looking. It
Okay.
really looked like a villain.
Do you
and
ha-
I went grocery shopping in that all the time.
Do you have like a gallery of those online?
Yes. So if
Okay.
you go to COVID Creations on both Facebook and Instagram, you can see a collection of the different sort of masks that I made.
Yeah. Well, I hope
as
that
well.
at some point you get to show those, like at a gallery or something.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
some
A lot
sort
of them are sold. Like, yeah, they were just ones I made.
But even the photographs, like as kind of a retrospective of what was going on in these last couple
that's
years.
an interesting, yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can always remake a lot of them and do my own photo shoots in them, and which I do frequently.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have LEDs or glow in the dark paint, and yeah, I was doing everything.
Okay.
Quick disconnects around the neck.
Sure, like just rip them off so you're ready.
Yeah, so you just hit the quick disconnect and it falls off your face.
Okay.
Yeah, instead of getting trapped in it or something.
Sure.
But,
like a magazine, press the button, boom.
Yeah, pretty much.